In a quiet village nestled between the rolling hills and the shimmering river, there lived a woman named AMARA. Her beauty was unmatched, her skin the color of warm honey, her eyes bright like the stars on a cloudless night. Her hair cascaded in thick, dark waves down her back, and when she walked through the village, it seemed as if the wind itself danced to her presence. But despite her beauty, AMARA was a lonely soul. The villagers avoided her, whispering behind her back that her allure was no gift from nature, but from the marine world. They believed she was a daughter of the sea, born of its mysterious depths, and that her beauty was a curse rather than a blessing. It was said that anyone who grew too close to her would fall under the influence of dark spirits, forever bound to the depths. So, AMARA lived in solitude, her only companions the birds in the trees and the wind in the fields. From an early age, AMARA had known that she was different. She could hear things no one else could. The birds would chirp to her, as if they were speaking directly into her soul, filling her with messages from the earth, the sky, and the unseen world. She had learned to listen carefully, for each chirp was not just a song but a message, a warning, or sometimes, a tale of the past. One warm spring morning, as AMARA sat by the river, she heard a bird singing with an urgency she had never felt before. Its song was sharp and persistent, unlike any bird call she had ever heard. The creature perched on a branch nearby, its feathers ruffled, eyes wide with distress. AMARA's heart quickened as she listened intently. Danger is coming. The river will flood, the village will fall, and many will perish. You must warn them, or it will be too late, the bird chirped repeatedly, its voice trembling with fear. AMARA felt a chill run through her. She had never heard a bird so afraid. Her instincts told her the bird spoke the truth, but how could she make the villagers believe her? They had always dismissed her, thinking her abilities were a curse. But AMARA was not one to turn away from a challenge, especially when lives were at stake. She rushed into the village, her heart pounding in her chest. She found the village council in the square, discussing matters of harvest, but none of them listened when she spoke of the impending flood. They scoffed at her, dismissing her words as another of her strange delusions. "You're just a girl with wild stories," one of the elders said, shaking his head. "You should not trouble us with your fantasies." But AMARA did not give up. She returned to the village the next day, and the next, pleading with the villagers, but they continued to mock her. As the days passed, the sky grew heavy, the winds began to stir, and the river swelled unnaturally. AMARA knew the disaster was near, but still, no one would listen. Then, on the third day, as the river began to rise higher than it ever had before, the village's worst fears began to come true. The floodwaters breached the banks, rushing toward the homes. The villagers screamed in panic, rushing to gather their belongings and escape. In that moment, AMARA saw the strange bird again, perched on a nearby tree, singing frantically. Without hesitation, AMARA ran through the village, shouting for everyone to follow her to higher ground, where the waters would not reach. At first, the villagers hesitated, still too proud to trust her. But as the floodwaters surged and their houses were swept away, they had no choice but to follow her. AMARA led the way through the rising waters, her heart racing but her step sure and steady. Behind her, the villagers trudged through the mud and the flood, their eyes wide with fear, but trusting in her because they had no other choice. The birds' warning had come true, and AMARA was their only hope. As they reached higher ground, the floodwaters finally began to recede, and the villagers breathed a collective sigh of relief. They were safe. And in that moment, they understood. AMARA was not cursed. She was a gift, a woman who had heard the voice of the earth, a woman who had saved them. Word of her bravery spread, reaching the ears of the king, whose palace lay in a distant city. He had heard of the woman who could hear the birds, who had saved the village from destruction. The king was impressed, and he sent his son, the prince, to meet her. The prince, a young man with a gentle heart and a sharp mind, traveled to the village. He found AMARA standing by the river, gazing at the peaceful waters now come again. He was captivated by her beauty, but more than that, he was moved by her courage and wisdom. He had heard the stories of her gift, but he had never seen anyone like her before. AMARA and the prince spent hours talking. He listened to her, not as the villagers had, with skepticism, but with respect and admiration. He was enchanted by her kindness, her wisdom, and her deep connection to the world around her. And AMARA, in turn, saw in the prince not just a royal figure, but a man of sincerity and heart. Over time, the prince and AMARA grew closer. He returned to the village again and again, and each time, he found more reasons to admire her. Eventually, the prince realized that his heart belonged to AMARA. And so, he asked for her hand in marriage. The villagers, who had once feared and shunned her, now celebrated her as their heroine. The king, impressed by AMARA's strength and grace, gave his blessing to their union. In a grand ceremony, the prince and AMARA were married, their love a symbol of the unity between the village and the royal family. From that day forward, AMARA was no longer seen as a mysterious outsider. She became a beloved figure, revered for her wisdom, her kindness, and her deep connection to nature. And as for the birds, they continued to chirp their messages to her, but now they were heard not just by her, but by all who were wise enough to listen. And so, the village thrived, protected by the woman who had once been feared, now loved and honored by all. AMARA had found her place, not only as a hero but as a beloved queen, and her story became one passed down through generations, a tale of beauty, courage, and the power of listening to the whispers of the world around us. In the end, AMARA and the prince lived a long and happy life, ruling wisely and justly, their hearts always guided by the songs of the birds and the wisdom of the earth.